Hey everyone, nice to have you all here. Thank you, Real Vision, for having us. Today we have Jeffrey, aka Jiho, from Sky Mavis, the creators of Axie Infinity, Gabby, the co-founder of Yield Guild, and then Jan and I are co-founders of Delphi Digital, and we're investors and have helped design certain aspects of Axie and Yield Guild as well. But yeah, how are you guys doing, Jeffrey and Gabby?
Good, good.
Yeah, feeling good. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So, by now everyone's probably heard about Axie Infinity in at least a conversation or two. I feel like you guys are almost a household name, but for all the Real Vision members, let's kind of like start from the top, right? So, Jiham, how about you kind of walk through, what Axie Infinity is at a high level? Like, what is an Axie even?
Sure. So Axie's broad goal is to introduce the world to something that's new and a little bit scary through something that's fun, relatable, and a bit nostalgic. So Axies, on the surface, they're kind of like these digital pets. They might seem like Pokemon or Tamagotchi. So they're these pets that you can battle and collect. But the kind of secret sauce is that we've used crypto and blockchain to really empower our users, make them owners of the game. And there's been this model that's emerged, right, called play to earn, where gamers all around the world have been able to turn their time and effort into real money, but basically farming these in-game resources that are tokenized and can be sold on these open markets. Um, so yeah, I guess Axie isn't just one game; it's an entire universe of games. So right now, you can battle your Axies, you can breed them, but we're also working on other forms of gameplay that we'll be rolling out over the coming years.
Nice. And I want to give Gabby like an opportunity to talk through Yield Guild, but maybe it's like helpful to first give people some context about actually dive in a little bit deeper there. Like, so obviously, Real Vision wouldn't have you guys on just for being like a random game. You guys have some insane metrics, right? So you have over 1.3 million daily active users. I think you just hit $1.5 billion in all-time NFT sales like today. You have over 800,000 Discord users. I'm not sure if that like makes you the biggest Discord yet or something like that, but I'm sure some of these metrics maybe even a bit still. Like, why has it been growing so fast this year, right? You guys have been at this for a while.
Sure. So building an NFT game or a blockchain game until this point has been quite difficult. So you need to create a fun game, but you also need to work on blockchain infrastructure, right? The tools that even enable you to build a blockchain game just didn't exist when we started out. So over the last couple of years, we've been, building this game, building this amazing community, but also building tools, right? So we have our own scaling solution called Ronin, which basically, so like Ethereum is amazing, but it's quite slow and expensive, which is prohibitive for a gaming experience. So we migrated from Ethereum to our own side chains, a scaling solution called Ronin, and that really once we paired that with our marketplace, our game, our community, that's kind of what led to parabolic growth. And I think this was the first time where a community, a blockchain gaming community at a certain scale, yeah, was able to basically kind of be unleashed by this, by a scaling solution. But yeah, it's a lot of factors, right? Like this is a community. It's the fact that we were building through a bear market when nobody really cared. So I think like right, the world is finally waking up to this trend and to how NFTs empower users across a bunch of verticals, right? Like art, gaming, collectibles. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, I guess like Gavin, you've been around the Axiom community for years now, even deeper than even Jan and I, right? Can you tell us a little bit about how you kind of saw the growings of this community, and maybe a little bit more about your journey, and then kind of like introduce Yield Guild as well?
Sure. So I've been a game developer for the last 18 years. Discovered Ethereum in 2017 and NFTs in early 2018. So I met Gio in the conference circuit, started playing Axie Infinity in October 2018. And yeah, last year, this time actually was the time when people in the rural area in my country, the Philippines, started discovering Axie Infinity as a way to earn money during the lockdown. And they discovered that they actually earn multiple times the amount of money that they earned from the jobs they were laid off from the local opportunities. So that was an incredibly eye-opening experience. That and people in the community discovering that they could lend out the excess axes that they had to these people who were coming in to play to earn. Yeah, basically led to the formation of Yield Guild. So Yield Guild is what we call a play to earn gaming guild. We invest in NFTs. So we have over 20,000 axes. We have a lot of land. We have a bunch of NFTs in different games as well, and then we lend them out to our player community so that they can play these games and earn an income from them. So yeah, that's the basic definition of a play to earn guild.
Nice. Yeah, I guess like yeah, maybe you can dive into Jiho gave a little bit of a teaser of what play to earn exactly is. Walk through why crypto gaming is kind of like an avenue that obviously us at Delphi are so excited about, but now everyone else around the world is also like waking up to.
No, yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the play to earn is the idea that players can participate in the game, earn an asset that they can then sell within the game to other players, and so you have like an economy that kind of exists there. And you know, it is you've had these elements in previous games where in World of Warcraft or Diablo, basically gold was valuable, and you'd have some players who can play and farm this item and then sell it and make good money relative to what they can make elsewhere. And at the same time, you have other players that are looking to purchase this resource and might not have the time or the patience to necessarily farm it. And so for them, the price is less of an issue. And so the key to all this is ensuring that you do have a sustainable economy that works and can scale over time to kind of bring in new users. And so we think what crypto enables is that in the traditional world, you had these game developers and game makers create barriers and make it very difficult for users to sell these items, to collect them. They had to trust third parties. There were technical frictions. And so it just made it really burdensome. Whereas here, it's effectively encouraged and they make it a lot easier to kind of go through the hoops and list your assets, sell them. But there's a lot more transparency. And so, yeah, the key to all this is really ensuring that you do have some level of sustainability where it's not just players coming in and selling an item that's relatively useless. You do need a good game around it that can feed off of it and basically allow allow there to be their demand on the other side. And so over time, you can kind of start to tweak these components, and then I'm sure Gabby and Jeff will go into that as well a bit more. But you do it's a very interesting economy, but it needs to be well balanced. And I think that's kind of the part that gets overlooked, where the biggest initial skepticism is like, how is this sustainable and how does this make sense?
Yeah, let's actually dive into that like right now, right? So, Jiho, obviously, I think Axie is one of the first like very obvious metaverse plays before metaverse was a buzzword. And I think one thing that you've constantly said is like, you guys are just working on your first product, which is still in alpha. Like, what do you exactly mean when you say that? What is that first product, and how does that work?
So yeah, we see ourselves building an entire universe. We see Axie not just as a game, but as this kind of fully functioning digital economy that's starting to take on these characteristics of a nation. Right, we have this really engaged community with deep social and economic ties to each other. There's shared pastimes, culture. So yeah, we see this as much more than a game. And we think that this could be very significant for the way online communities work together, play together moving forward. But yeah, we're still quite early in development. So we've been working on Axie since 2018. But yeah, that's not a lot of time considering, right? Like there's been so much to build, right? Like we built an NFT marketplace, our own wallet, our own side chain, gaming features. Players obviously always want new content and more content. We're working on a DEX, right? So 25% of our players are unbanked right now. So I think we have a really amazing opportunity to provide some basic financial services to these to many of our users that have never really been able to even have a stable source of income, let alone something like a debit or credit card. So yeah, I think the idea for us is to really leverage the network effect, right? So one of the problems with blockchain and crypto is that there are no kind of widely adopted consumer apps, right? So one of our goals is just to become the first blockchain consumer app that hits a certain scale, and we can leverage that position to move into a bunch of verticals, right? Financial services, e-commerce, right? We can become like the Disney of crypto by gobbling up IP. So yeah, I think because we've hit this scale and gotten to this level of network effect, I think that opens up a lot of opportunities if we keep our feet on the gas pedal.
Yeah, no, I think an important thing to like really dive into there is kind of like just how strong that community is, right? In crypto, community is a word that's thrown around, basically for every protocol, every token. But I think one thing Jan, the Delphi team, and myself kind of realized very early on, just being in your Discord when it was a fraction of what it is today with its 800,000 players, is just how strong that community is, right? And DeFi, or other sections of crypto. Liquidity is a commodity, but so is community to some degree, where you'll see very strong DeFi protocols almost lose some interest if they're not, their number isn't going up or they're not like innovating fast enough. Whereas the Axie community, you guys were, building through the bear, but just getting stronger by the day, right? What's your retention rate right now for like the Axie community?
Yeah, so it's quite rare for important Axie community members to leave the ecosystem. In fact, I could probably count them on right like one hand the number of like super important influential people within the community that have left. Um, yeah, so people rarely leave the Axie ecosystem. In terms of like retention rate, nine of 10 players that are playing on that own Axies on the first day are still playing a month later. So I mean, obviously, right? It's not just a game. That's something that people are doing for fun. There's also economic aspects to it, right? It's something more like a side gig, or for many people a main source of income. So yeah,
Yeah.
we keep people within the ecosystem, and it's kind of this snowball. So even in the early days when Axie was small, we knew that the growth would kind of just compound, and because we weren't leaking people, so it was just about being relentless and continuing to roll that snowball.
Yeah, I guess like not only have you kept community members, but you kind of like inspired them to start their own things, which is why the Gabby story is so amazing too. So like Gabby, like when did Yield Guild start, right? Like how did that come about? How did you know that this was going to be something that you wanted to dedicate kind of your life to?
Okay, so even as far as maybe 2, 3 years ago, I'd been thinking about the idea of a blockchain gaming guild, which is like the evolution of what are basically World of Warcraft or RuneScape guilds. But the concept of these guilds owning their own assets, it was something that was really compelling in my head. And I honestly think it wouldn't have been possible until Axie's land gameplay came out. So I just kept it at the back of my head, and during this time when Axie scholarships came out, so the concept of lending out your Axies to someone else, to the scholar who would play them and having a revenue share of that, that was when I realized that the concept was already viable. And that was when I reached out to you last year, Anil, during this time and said, hey, I wanted to put up a game farming guild and start with Axie Infinity. And I targeted the Delphi team specifically because you guys had designed the XS token, and I just knew that you guys would get it. And yeah, I was right. You guys got it, and that's kind of how the guild got started.
Yeah, you mentioned the AXS token, right? I'd love for Gio and Jan to go into this, right? Gio, where does the AXS token, come into play? How did that come around? And then, Jan, like, what does this mean for, just gaming, crypto gaming in general, right? And where does AXS sit in there?
Sure. So the Axis token, its broad goal is to align the incentives between everyone in the Axie ecosystem. So developers, players, content creators. So yeah, it's you can look at it as a slice of the Axie universe, right? So basically, we've cut up the Axie universe into 270 million little shards, and we're basically going to be giving them out to our players and allowing them to earn them by playing the game. We want Axie to become the first game that's owned and operated by the community that plays it. So this is a really long-term goal. It'll be a gradual process of getting there. But yeah, I guess the idea is that Sky Mavis is we're the inventors, the creators of Axie Infinity, but long term, we want to be only one of many significant entities that are building on top of this universe. And in order to do that, we need to also decentralize the ownership of Axie. It can't be something that's only owned by us.
Yeah, no, like Jeff mentioned, it's a really important coordination tool, and so the idea is 4.25% of all marketplace spend goes to a treasury, and all of the breeding fees go to a treasury, and so there will be other kind of utility or things to basically spend on in the future as the game evolves. But all of that in-game spend is then pooled in a treasury, and that treasury is owned by the token holders. So it can be distributed to them. It can be used for incentives. It'll likely be deployed in ways that we haven't really even thought of yet because of all the kind of levels that will be built on top of the game. But the idea is, so this token grants you access to the cash flow of the platform and also enables you to have kind of governance rights in the future, and those will evolve as well. And in terms of the distribution of the token, one of the things that will be enabled soon will be kind of a way to enhance play to earn. So the idea is you want your community to own the game, and I think this type of idea is certainly new to the gaming space, and it's definitely here to stay in terms of creating stickiness within players, which we're seeing happen here, building a community and giving people not only just the enjoyment of being able to play the game, but now they get to benefit from the financial upside and the growth in the game. And so if you think about the previous gaming models, there's always people coming in to play for fun. Now you're basically creating entire economies and ecosystems where you do have the people that come in to play for fun, but you have the people that want to come in and play to earn, and those that want to purely just speculate on kind of the upside of some of these NFTs. And in the middle of all of that is the AXS token, which creates just massive alignment across everyone. And so now all the early players and even just the kind of the people that come into the ecosystem now aren't just giving away their time necessarily to play a game, but they do have ways of benefiting the game, ways of kind of impacting the game. And I think that creates a lot of additional engagement within the community where now they can think of creative things they can do to help grow the ecosystem or go through governance and suggest make changes. And so we think it's a really novel way for games to be communities rather than a game maker and a set of players sitting on kind of opposite sides of the table, where you always had that dichotomy in the traditional gaming world.
Yeah, I think we need to actually explain how big this actually is, right? So Jiho, your Twitter is, you're basically like the Naval of crypto gaming to me right now, right? Like you've said some great things, like you basically lowered the tax from 100% to 4%. For Axie, you guys spend $0 on marketing, and your gamers earn revenue, but that's essentially the marketing spend, right? How big has the treasury grown? And then and why is this looking at Axie's revenue not the same as looking at revenue for other DeFi protocols? I think this is something that a lot of people miss, even in the crypto space.
Yeah, so the treasury, I mean, it's growing, I think at a rate of like almost $15 million a day right now. So
it's about 1.2 B right now.
So we've done about $300 million in revenue over the last 30 days. This is more than protocols like Ethereum or Bitcoin. So yeah, it's growing. I mean, I think this is showing the massive potential of gaming to really ignite and passion, and get kind of real people, real everyday people using this stuff, and spending within these digital economies, right? I think the world is becoming increasingly digital. People are yeah, relying on these worlds to, you know, for much more than fun, right? Like there's also you know, so deep social ties, right? There's a lot of focus on play to earn as well, right? Because that's kind of the novel, interesting thing. But right, there are also, I also want to stress, right, that there are collectors, right, who are just, you know, coming in to spend for fun and status. That's obviously one of the things that makes it easier to balance the long term economics of the system. So.
Absolutely, and you know, with certain other protocols, you often people can kind of conflate revenue and profit. Where if you think of something like, you know, a protocol that has to incentivize liquidity, um, part of the revenue will go towards incentivizing liquidity, and then the residual kind of goes to the token holder. Whereas here, all revenue is basically profit, where, you know, it's a different cost model, and so oftentimes you kind of see this compared with the size of a traditional game, but um, and that's where I think people kind of looking on the outside looking in, start to make, you know, comparisons of, oh, how big has this gotten? This is already potentially too large. But we have to realize that all revenue is basically profit to the token holders, and so as the ecosystem grows, so do uh, those profits, and they go directly to the token holders themselves. And on top of that, I think there's, you know, it's not purely just this is the cash flow that this token is entitled to, but with all the additional kind of functionality and features that will be accessible with the token itself, there's a certain premium that comes to that is added to that token. That's, you know, aside from just the pure financials of it. And so I think that component, and just generally, you know, looking at these numbers, people wondering, you know, how is this reasonable? But if you think about it, in the traditional game, when you're spending on an item, that basically becomes a sunk cost, and you're never really able to kind of move it out. And so people are much less comfortable spending, knowing this is just kind of like a black hole. Whereas here, you can easily sell whatever you're buying, and on all the axes. So you might think there's like an upfront barrier, but you're able to recoup basically all of your costs pretty comfortably if you're really moving in. And so I think that kind of velocity helps create a lot of revenue, one, but it also makes people a lot more likely and comfortable to spend. And I think it naturally kind of grows the whole ecosystem. We think about, you have like the play to earn users, you have the individuals that are playing for fun, and then you kind of have speculation that's littered across all of that. And so I think there's a lot of reflexivity in thinking about how with traditional games, it's just, you know, a certain amount of users come in and they want to play. Here you have the individuals that want to come in and play to earn, but having those players come in actually makes the game more fun for those who want to use it in a competitive way, because with more users, there's more kind of accurate skill matching, there's more granularity in those skill levels, there's more progress. And so you're not showing up into a PvP and just the chances of you finding someone appropriately matched are slim. So like that P2E component almost creates some escape velocity and helps alleviate the early concerns and the early risk of, will there be enough people to kind of come in and make this game fun? And so once you kind of get beyond that, it becomes really positive, reflexive in that way. And at the same time, as there are more users, the people who are collecting and speculating on the higher end of these axes, or the land items, they also benefit, because naturally, as more users come into the game, there's more people kind of, you know, after your valuable items, and that actually creates more value for you. And I think like that whole reflexivity is really what's helped kickstart a lot of this, and bring in a lot of different types of users, from, you know, people who are just looking to farm, to people who are spending exorbitant amounts of money on the higher end looking to collect, and everyone in between.
Yeah, for there's a lot of like buzzwords thrown around as far as like banking on banked over the past decade, but too, I think our team, Axie and Yield Guild, have actually been living those out, right, and actually playing those out. So Gabby, how has Yield Guild kind of how does Yield Guild view kind of like this space evolving, right? Well, one thing that I'm kind of cautious about is our team is obviously really excited about crypto gaming in general. We don't think Axie is going to be the only game. But I do think Axie's like, there's not going to be another Axie, right? Mostly because like that community aspect, you can't mimic that anymore, because now everyone's trying to be the next Axie. Like, how are you thinking about that, Gabby? And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we think that people will want to have different kinds of online experiences in the metaverse. So they can be games, they can be virtual worlds in a way that they can express themselves and earn an income from it. So a player is one aspect of that. Even within the Axie universe itself, you see different kinds of quote unquote jobs. There are people who are real estate agents. There are breeders, of which there's a lot of them. There are a lot of content creators, for example. But not everyone would want to play Axie. Some of them would want to play a game in different genres. They might want to play, for example, a role playing game, an open world game, a strategy game. So at Yale Guild, what we want to do is invest in all of the games that have a good play to earn component so that we can offer the assets to our players and they can express themselves on like how they want to play and how they want to contribute to the metaverse. So we're really excited for kind of the intersection of the creator economy meets the metaverse in the form of play to earn, because now you can earn a living expressing yourself on like what you're good at in these different games. And sometimes it may be just as a player, but there's so much more to be discovered on what people can do and how they can make money basically in the metaverse.
Yeah, I think like one of the aspects that really excites there's so much about Yogo that excites me, but right now every VC, every investor is getting hit up by you know 10, 20 different games a week that are trying to raise and say we're the Axie for this, or we're trying to do the play to earn here, etc. And there's obviously a lot of trash out there, and there's a lot of noise. But there are a few games that will kind of like build over these next few years and kind of like make something really impressive. Yield Guild, kind of like the way that we see it, is almost kind of like this index token on productive NFTs, right? And your treasury has already been investing. Obviously, a lot of its success near term has been due to Axie's insane growth this year. But talk a little bit about how that treasury is run, what you guys currently hold, how you see you being able to be this kind of like war chest of players to kind of like help bootstrap other games that may not have the community that Axie has anytime soon. But how are you thinking through that?
Okay, so we want to invest in the NFTs of these different play to earn games. So, for example, we have cars in Formula One Delta Time. We have two estates in the Sandbox. We have land in League of Kingdoms. We have tokens in Illuvium. We have a city in Ember Sword. We have guilds for Guilds of Guardians. So these assets enable players to play and earn in these different games. And over time, our treasury that's just adds through all of these different games and then the assets of these games. But also when we invest into these assets, when we bring our players in, when we contribute to these games, and these games grow in value, especially in their economies, we believe that a lot of the value is going to be reflected back in their governance tokens. So with these games that we invest in, we also like to invest a little bit in the governance tokens, which honestly has worked out really well for us in Axie Infinity, where the excess tokens that we invested in at a very low price are now in the like several millions of dollars, because the thesis played out correctly in that if you invest into a game ecosystem that does really well, then the underlying governance token should do well as well.
Awesome. And I guess like, Jiho, like how do you see Yield Guild's like role in the Axie, metaverse kind of evolving over time, right? Like Yield Guild's been a huge help, especially this year, but how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I think that the future of these guilds is going to be very intricate and complex within the Axie universe, right? I think so. Obviously, they're doing many things, right? They're providing player liquidity, but they're also evangelizing the game, building content, kind of just serving as a growth arm, right? That's able to push into different countries and just grow the entire space and grow Axie within these regions. Um, so yeah, I think there's a lot of right, like there's a lot of social capital in these guilds, and games are going to compete to try and attract them into the universe. So yeah, I think it's been amazing to witness. So I think the social aspect of the game as well, right? It's like Okay, YGG at one meta level, right, is this gaming guild that's actually earning real money. But at another level, it's also this kind of society within a society where people have fun, have friends, and they're kind of becoming business partners, right? And because it's happening in this digital economy where there are real world implications, I think the connections become a much more significant, right? These aren't the gaming friends that you're hiding from, when your wife comes home, right? Like, right? Or you're not ashamed of this, right? It's oftentimes right. I think the cool thing that I've seen and that people always tell me when I meet them is like, this is the first game that I let my kid play, or this is the first game that my wife lets me play. Um, right? It's something that people can justify their time gaming to their friends and family. I think oftentimes that's a big part of it is like these people would be playing games anyway, but oftentimes the people in their lives don't want them to game because right most games they're extractive of value. Therefore, they actually hurt you in real life. There's this stigma, which is partially true, right? Like I got sent away to boarding school when I was a kid because I was playing too much World of Warcraft, right? So there's this stigma against gaming, and part of it is kind of true because it's an extractive system where you're not really able to get anything out of it. But yeah, these games. These are digital economies that can have positive real world effects. So.
Yeah, I think just to drive that point home, right? You said this many times, but like actually, it's so much more than a game. It's even more than a metaverse. It really is like where all these different aspects converge, and it's become this social network for people where Gabby can connect with his co-founders. It's become kind of like this almost like university, right? Where so many people for the first time learn what investing is, what saving is. The Uniswap airdrop story is just such an fascinating one where over 60% of your players were from the Philippines and got that airdrop from Uniswap, and that was life changing money for them, especially if they held and learn how to invest. What one thing you kind of like touched on there is kind of just how excited you are about this everything that's going to be built in this metaverse, right? So before we even dive into kind of like how your community is going to be building and all the different rabbit holes that can kind of start going down, what are some things that Sky Mavis is like focused on right now? What are some products that you guys are really excited about to finally get out in the world? And what's the timeline on that?
Yeah, there's a lot in the pipeline. We have a DEX on the way. So that's basically going to allow our players to seamlessly swap tokens on Ronin without having to send their assets to Ethereum to then send to like an exchange or to use a gas intensive exchange on Ethereum. So basically, there's a lot of friction right now, even for our players to cash out and to exchange value, and within this play to earn economy. So the DEX is going to make that a lot easier. So I think that's actually the feature that our players are most excited for. I think it will have like almost like a Ronin level of effect on supercharging the ecosystem. We also have access staking, which obviously you guys are heavily involved in. We have that on the way as well. On the gameplay side of things, we have an upgraded battle system that's on the way. Hopefully, maybe something playable by the public this winter. Yeah, we also have a land system that's in the works, right? So this is resource collection, city building. You're allying yourselves, with your neighbors and friends, and fighting for control of territory. That territory, right, kind of has this level of resource or token distribution per plot of land. So our players are also extremely excited about that as well.
Yeah, I guess just to give the Real Vision viewers some context, Ronin DEX meaning decentralized exchange, very similar to like what Uniswap is, and then the Battle V2, new type of gaming coming out for kind of their main product that they have right now. And then the land gameplay is I feel like in my mind I think of it as almost kind of like a Farmville or like a Clash of Clans. type game, right? So other games being built off this IP, which is like such an exciting part. Yeah, maybe you can take a second and go into like what AXS staking actually is and means as well, right? I think that's like one piece that people might be looking at AXS and not realizing that's coming sooner than they realize.
Right. So at the moment, all the protocol revenue is being pooled in a treasury, and yeah, you can that's viewable by everyone. It's a public wallet. So that's partially been one of the drivers for the run up is everyone kind of looking at these revenue numbers and thinking about price that way. And so what's going to happen in the not too distant future is that some of that treasury will start getting distributed to token holders. And so what that means is if you stake the AXS token, you'll receive a yield, and it's basically like a dividend from the revenue of the protocol. And so this is going to be exciting because right now AXS exists and it's mostly used for breeding, but over time now you'll have a lot more engagement from the community, and there'll kind of be additional utility integrated on top over time with governance and kind of some other mechanics. But in the near future, what that means is those who hold AXS can now stake it and receive yield from protocol revenue, and we think that's certainly going to be exciting, and it'll be really useful for a lot of people. Where I know breeders now are rather than kind of using their own AXS to breed, they can stake and kind of use that protocol revenue and help them maintain their kind of exposure to the token, but also still be able to kind of breed and continue to grow their AXS or their Axie collection. So we certainly think that's going to be a really interesting component that launches, and particularly for the community itself, where now they'll actually be able to benefit from all that revenue and see those distributions.
Yeah, and I think like when you talk about Axie revenue, one thing that is really exciting for me, long term, is kind of that SDK that Sky Mavis is working on, right? Where and Gio, feel free to jump in here, but like you guys are essentially, you guys have created the art, the IP, and most importantly, the sticky community. And now, instead of you guys just building these products and games on top of it, you're gonna allow your community, like unleash this to your community and say, hey, go build, go have fun, and whatever you guys want to build is kind of the sky's the limit, right? How are you thinking about that? What's the timeline on that? And then like what does that mean for gaming, right? I don't think we've actually seen a game like this kind of exist before.
Yeah, so we're working on an SDK, which was basically a suite of tools that will allow our community, other developers, to come into the Axie universe and build on top of it, right? Something kind of like Roblox, right? But I think it becomes really powerful when this is an IP, an entire universe that is really owned by many different parties. So yeah, I think, in the long run, we as Sky Mavis, as the inventors of Axie, we're not going to be able to build everything within this universe. There's just going to be too much. So we need to also kind of decentralize, right, the development of the game, right? So we want other parties to be able to come in and build games that our community can enjoy. And yeah, I think like that. So the SDK is going to be a large part of that. There may be multiple SDKs. There may be SDKs that are built by other parties as well. So yeah, I think like it is going to be unprecedented. But I think we see this as an inevitable future, and it's something that hopefully we can be the first to do. And yeah, I think like this is something that's more in the it's a little bit at the, I guess, further off in terms of the pipeline, but it's something that we're building towards. It's kind of a North Star that guides us.
Nice. No, I love that. And I guess like Gabby, you've seen, actually, kind of grow up from, being this little baby that no one really cared about to something that's, essentially a household name now. Where do you kind of see actually going from here? And then also, where do you see crypto gaming kind of like, borrowing from Axie's playbook? And, what do you think is like some of the most important things that a game that's trying to be big, can kind of like copy or kind of like learn from what Axie's done right? And then, we can get Jiho's opinion as well.
The core strength of Axie when I arrived, even in early 2018, with less than 1,000 players, was how much the Axie team, the Sky Mavis team, had leaned on its community as co-creators, and this shows also in how the economy is run, with players owning most of the value, with Axie taking only 4.25% on the trading volume, and this is something that traditional game developers, even ones that have really good kind of game economy experience, have to learn. It's very much an inverted model from in-app purchase system, for example, where customer pays $1, App Store gets 30%, and then the developer gets the rest. Here, player actually pays another player, and the other player gets over 96% of the value. So that's pretty radical in game terms. And doing so just creates such a strong network effect where the people who are already interested in the game are empowered, they're aligned financially. So the incentives are so aligned for the players to go the network, and it's the most powerful thing I've ever seen, and it's something that I think if other game developers are able to capture that magic, then like no matter what game genre you're playing, just turning over the power to the players and the economy is such a powerful thing.
Like what made Axie work, right? Like what do you think? Obviously new games can't kind of copy and paste exactly your playbook, but what would be your advice to kind of these games that are working so hard to not even dethrone you, but just kind of like get some of your player base?
Just like the American Revolution inspired the French Revolution and basically led to the collapse of monarchy across Europe, right? Like this possibility, right, that this is just the start of a great revolution that unshackles players in many different ecosystems. Yeah, like freedom in the long run wins because you unlock human ingenuity and creativity. We're living like you can look at these games that are purely about fun as right. You can look at them as very centralized authoritarian systems with 100% tax rates. And yeah, all we've done is we're giving more freedom, more agency to our user base, and we think that this is good for business as well, right? Like this is a way that we can grow faster. It's a way to scale without having to do unscalable things. Right at the end of the day, it's like I think all current games are like unscalable because someone is going to come around and make a game that's more fun than you or hasn't some hot new mechanic, right? So it's if fun is the only thing that games are competing on, like there's always going to be someone who comes and makes a more fun game, right? So this actually limits the size and scale of how large games have been able to get. So I think that these play to earn gaming ecosystems are going to be the largest games of all time. I think they're going to be trillions of dollars in these ecosystems. I think there are going to be billions of people. Right. It also expands the definition of who can become a gamer. Many of our gamers are single mothers that never would have been able to play a game because they're taking care of their children, right? So this is unlocking an entire new user group, a new archetype of gamer that's more in line with I don't know who human beings actually are.
Yeah, I love that. Jan, for Real Vision, obviously a lot of investors are listening in. Like you're managing partner at Delphi Ventures, and a lot of the time we spent over the past few months, after Axie's kind of insane growth, has just been looking at games, right? And obviously we said no to most of those, but how are you thinking about crypto gaming evolving? How do you assess what's a good game, what's a not a good game? How they're leveraging their token or NFTs? Give people some like context for that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and we've certainly seen a lot more deal flow on that side after people see the success of AXS, and I think it encourages them enough to look into how this whole ecosystem works, and then the ideas start growing. So you see like a slight lag where the game starts to blow up and everyone starts to get really interested, and now we're seeing developers move into the space from the traditional world and basically realize that this dynamic makes a lot more sense, and it's also a bit easier to get off the ground to some extent, just in terms of the funding that you need and building that community early. Whereas and I think it allows you kind of release the game in stages, and as you're starting to sell in-game items that can be used somewhat to like fund operations. And I think there are more creative ways to bootstrap the game itself. And so what we're looking for, obviously, one of the most important things is the game fun, and does the game make sense? So there's a lot of questions around understanding mechanics, understanding how the developers are thinking about what's important, what's not in the future, making sure the game really has enough kind of levers, because you'll make predictions on how you think the in-game economy will exist and grow, but in reality, it's never going to work out that way. So it's important to ensure that you do have the kind of appropriate levers that you need to make sure that you can make adjustments, whether it's increasing or reducing certain costs, or different kind of things that you can pull on to adjust the direction of the economy if you think it's potentially drifting in a not healthy or unsustainable direction. So, looking for a quality game, looking for an economy that makes sense. So there needs to be a logical loop where you're not just having excess in one area and then you're figuring out like, okay, if there is excess, then that typically means there aren't going to be necessarily as many buyers for that product or that element or whatever is kind of farmed. And so it's ensuring that the loop makes sense, where as users grow, you'll logically see them kind of grow in all these elements, and you won't have kind of seismic discrepancies between different pockets. So entertainment value, sustainable economy. The token side, I think we're it, so generally when we're looking at projects, the token econ kind of is one of the more important parts. But I think with most projects, the econ, so what we're talking about in-game econ, is normally kind of pulled together with the token in traditional projects. But here you often have other resources, so it's not as ingrained into it. But what that does mean is that you do have a bit more flexibility there. So we're obviously concerned with the token and what its place will be in the ecosystem. But we think the other components of the in-game economy are a bit more important because they're kind of more crucial to the game. And then we can work with the team to creatively integrate the token in certain areas and make it beneficial. But it's actually interesting. We're more concerned with the in-game economy than the direct token application in these systems. But it's obviously still a concern. So yeah, I'd say those are kind of the core things we're looking at.
Yeah, I guess like everyone's seen that chart where it's like, gaming's revenue is like, multiples more than, the other entertainment industries, music, film, etc. But one thing that the more I try and wrap my head around what's exactly going on here, like are we just totally missing the ball where that's probably not even, that's probably just like at the low end of what this market can actually go into, both for, Axie as a play to earn game, like what Gio was saying, but also, what Gabby's building at Yield Guild is like this kind of like job board of the metaverse, right? Like how big is the addressable market for these? And obviously there's no like right answer here, but I feel like we might be getting this off by a lot right now.
Yeah, I'll let the other guys jump in as well. But I think we're certainly underpricing it considerably, and I think one of the main reasons why is probably what Gio said about just thinking about your user demographics and how much they shift in traditional gaming, where it's purely fun. So you kind of already funnel it out to people who one have free time, are into gaming, and then you're starting to compete across the gaming universe for their time. Whereas here, you have single mothers, you have retirees, you have kids, you have everyone in between who is able to play, potentially play to earn, and that just kind of grows the TAM considerably. So I think that's one of the reasons why we're probably undersizing the economy, or the potential for this economy.
It's probably at least 1 to 2 billion players that are ready to go into play to earn. So we're still at the very beginning. Axie is a little over 1 million daily active users. And yeah, if you look across the world, especially in the developing markets, if you look at Southeast Asia, China, India, Latin America, across Africa, how many people will actually want to play games for like $500 to $1,000 a month? I think you're gonna see that we're only in the very beginning. We're just about to get started, and this is going to bring the game industry, which is something like 120 billion market, into the trillions, because Now this is where economy is, and people are earning real value out of it. So yeah, we've barely just really scratched the surface of where play to earn could be.
There's one thing that I also want to point out, which is that many of our players are coming in and they're learning about blockchain. They're learning how to use a wallet. They're learning how to use send transactions, look at a block explorer to verify chain activity. These, right, like these are kind of niche skills right now. But I do think that in the future, right, not knowing how to use a blockchain is going to be like someone who doesn't know how to type on a keyboard.
What does Axie and Yoga look like in a decade? And I know that's in crypto that's impossible. At Delphi, we don't even plan for years out. We plan for like each quarter. But what is kind of like the overall vision? I'll let you start, Jiho.
So yeah, we want to introduce the world to blockchain in a fun way, and I think if we do that, if we can do it successfully, there's going to be a massive opportunity here. I think we are really interested in figuring out what the future of digital economies look like, what the future of games look like. We're starting to see basically games work as networks, right? So I think like one of my mental models is I look at Axie as a network, right? And then it's like it makes sense for users to be able to earn some money and get some benefit because each user is bringing value to the network, perhaps more value than the previous user. Is kind of like some gaming version of Metcalfe's law, maybe Metcalfe's law. Anyway, so we're seeing games becoming networks and turning into real digital economies. Games are becoming increasingly more social. So yeah, I think that people are just going to be spending more of their time in these digital economies. Like having fun will be part of it, but then there'll also be these social and economic aspects that are just as important. So yeah, I think like Axie, we want to be leading this trend. We want to be at the forefront of this trend. I think we're in an amazing position to do it.
Yeah, Gabby, how about you go ahead with kind of like the overall vision for Yield Guild 10 years from now?
Sure, and I do think that this is a 10 to 15 year like vision on our end. We've barely gotten started in it, and we really see Yield Guild as the gateway to the metaverse. So the people in the physical world that go into these virtual worlds for a living, whether you're a player, whether you're a landowner, a farmer, an avatar designer, you're gonna go into Yield Guild and kind of bring yourself to the metaverse. So you'll start earning a living. We'll be the ones that will be facilitating that. We'll be kind of helping groups get into these different games, virtual worlds, organize them, help them earn money. And I do think that we are going to be one of the kind of basic building blocks of the metaverse. And yeah, I'm just excited to see this play out in the next decade.
Yeah, and I guess like it takes a village, right, to build what you guys are building. Sky Mavis and Yield Guild's core teams alone aren't going to be able to do and achieve the vision and mission that you guys have. So a lot of this kind of like incorporates and takes needs a lot of other people to come in. So one of my favorite parts about both Axie and Yield Guild is like no matter what someone's skill set is or what they currently do, how old they are, they can try and they can most likely figure out a way to contribute. So maybe gives people some ideas of where they can kind of find you guys, but also like all the different kind of like help you guys are looking for, right, within your community and kind of the vision that you guys are building towards.
People of many different skill sets have come into Axie and found ways to contribute. So there are content creators, streamers, community developers have been building analytics sites. If you're just a positive person, you can come into the Discord and help people bring good energy, and that also helps. I think that's one of the reasons that we had good communities. I used to give free Axies to people that I just found entertaining or thought that they were a nice person that I wanted in the community, right? So in the beginning, it was about finding the right people, because at the beginning of any organization, right? An organization, as it grows, like the people who join it tend to like have some similarities with the initial seed cohort, right? So it's like if you have a solid foundation of good people, right, like it's going to attract more good people, and it's kind of like this positive compounding thing. So just basically being a good person and being part of the Axie community, you're actually helping out. So yeah, there are so many ways to get involved. Like if you're interested in what we're building, right, you can go to skymavis.com check out some of our careers as well. Maybe, maybe maybe there's, a position for you with what on our team. So I think, there are just so many ways to get involved. Also as an Axis holder, as a battler, as a collector, I think there's really something for most people.
Yeah, Gabby, how about you, right? Like Yield Guild has even more of a like breadth of kind of where you guys are looking for help, especially because you guys are, early on. You just started, end of last year technically, but realistically, this year has been where you guys have kicked things off. Where are you guys looking for help? Your community is already growing so strong. I think feeding off, the energy, the good vibes that Axie has. But how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, so we've actually hired a bunch of positions from the community. We picked up several developers there, business people, a lot of really good kind of community managers as well. So we tell everyone, like, how do I become of the member of the guild? Drop in our Discord. It's discord.gg/YGG and start contributing. It might be as a game ambassador. It might be as someone who eventually becomes part of the team. And yeah, just as Gio said, make a positive contribution to the community in your own way, and you'll get rewarded for it.
Awesome. And, Jan, any like last parting words to like investors who, may not be taking crypto seriously or crypto gaming seriously? Like, I think we've had some pretty incredible conversations just over the past few weeks of funds that, may not have bought Bitcoin, but are looking into AXS and YGG. Like, it's pretty insane. Any parting words for those guys?
Yeah, I think just it's just really worth taking a look and seeing under the hood rather than potentially dismissing it. Like a lot of the conversations we've had, both from people who've been in this space for a while and also who are just starting to look into the viability of crypto gaming and trying to figure out its market size and understand where to invest. It really makes a lot of sense once the more you look into it, and so in the same way, you've seen very little kind of turnover in the Axie community. I think a lot of the people who are bullish on crypto gaming and understanding how this can really grow into something much larger than the traditional gaming space. Once people really look into it, it starts to make sense. So I think realistically, just taking some time and reading through the mechanics or just listening to a few podcasts to really understand how this can be sustainable, how it can grow is really important. And so as people start to look into that, they think about potential new kind of implementations, new designs, and there's a lot of innovation happening, the same way you saw innovation happening in DeFi and other areas that started to gain traction. We think this is one of those. And what's interesting is that it brings in an entirely new user base to crypto as well, where it's people who are gamers, and if you think about kind of the natural overlap of crypto and gaming and those demographics, there's a lot there. It's digitally native, typically somewhat tech savvy individuals, and it's something that we think will usher in a lot more growth to the space in general, which obviously benefits everyone. And so for investors, I would say really just like take some time out and take a look, and before you know it, you'll really fall down the rabbit hole as well.
Yeah, I guess like to give all the viewers some context. There's so much content on Axie out there. I think so, and Yield Guild as well. I think our teams with Invarsis, we put together this great play to earn documentary, which you can watch on YouTube. Gabby, Jiho, Jan, myself, we've been on so many different podcasts talking about Axie and kind of Yield Guild as well, that you can definitely check out. Delphi podcast. Jiho went on Bankless, which was great too. Packy McCormick put together this great post for Not Boring, which I think you guys should absolutely check out as well. But Jiho, Gabby, Jan, like where can people follow you guys? Where can they follow Axie, Yield Guild's growth, and then we can kind of close out.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on Twitter at Jihos_Axie, JIHOZ_Axie. Also follow Axie Infinity on Twitter. I think you can try to get into our Discord. It'll depend on whether we're accepting new members at the time, which is just discord.gg/Axie. Come meet the rest of the community. Yeah, I think, if you just go on YouTube and search like how to play Axie, how to get started with Axie, right? Like you're going to find all this amazing content from our community members on how to get started, how to take a look. And yeah, if you're the right person, it's going to resonate with you, and you're going to just want to go down the rabbit hole. So.
How about you, Gabby?
Okay, so go to our website, yieldguild.io, and mint the guild badge for free. You just have to pay gas. Go to our Twitter, twitter.com/yieldguild, or discord.gg/ygg if you want to interact with the awesome community.
Awesome. And then, Jan and I, we're co-founders of Delphi. Obviously, if you guys are, looking at Axie or Yieldgo from an investment perspective, definitely recommend you guys going to our site, delphidigital.io, to see our reports, become a member, etc. Jan, where can everyone find you on Twitter?
Yeah, Twitter is just first name, last name. At first name, last name, and everything else would just be on delphidigital.io.
Nice. And I'm Neil Delphi on Twitter. Thanks Real Vision for having us. This is great. We should definitely do this again, because I think we just hit the tip of the iceberg here.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us.